Welcome, I'm Helmut Licht. Thank you for joining me in the second video on astrological mini reading using ordinary playing cards. In the first video, I showed you how to set everything up. I showed you how to shuffle the cards, how to place them onto the board. And in this video, I'd like to show you now how to continue from that point on and interpret the cards as you put them down one by one on the board. Not everybody watching this video might be an advanced astrologer. Some of them might be beginners trying to get into it. For their sake, I'm asking the advanced astrologers to please bear with me for the next 2 minutes while I explain the very basics of astrology. Thank you. All right, here is a plain chart. These divisions right here are called houses, and they are numbered. So let's put the numbers in. In the natural chart, every house corresponds to a sign. So the first house corresponds to Aries. Let's put that in. Here's Aries. The second house corresponds to Taurus. The third house corresponds to Gemini. The fourth house to Cancer. The fifth house to Leo. The sixth house Virgo. The seventh house Libra. The eighth house Scorpio. The ninth house Sagittarius. The 10th house Capricorn. The 11th house Aquarius. And the 12th house Pisces. And then we put in the planets. We have the sun. The sun rules the sign Leo. And then next we have the moon. The moon rules the sign Cancer. Next we have Mercury. Mercury rules two signs. It rules Gemini, and it also rules Virgo. Next we have Venus. Venus also rules two signs. It rules Taurus, and it also rules Libra. Next we have Mars. Mars also rules two signs. It rules Aries, and it also rules Scorpio. It co-rules Scorpio. You'll see why I say co-rule a little later. Next we have Jupiter. Jupiter also rules two signs. It rules Sagittarius, and it also co-rules Pisces. Next we have Saturn. It rules two signs also. It rules Capricorn, and it also co-rules Aquarius. Then we have Uranus. Uranus is the main ruler of Aquarius, but two planets rule Aquarius, Uranus and Saturn. Next we have Neptune. Neptune is the main ruler of Pisces, but Pisces has two rulers, Neptune the main ruler and Jupiter as co-ruler. And then we have Pluto. Pluto rules Scorpio. Pluto is the main ruler of Scorpio. Mars is the co-ruler. And that's pretty much it. So now what I want you to associate in your mind is that Aries, first house, and Mars are all tied together. They're family. Taurus, the second house, and Venus, they are also a family. Third house, Gemini. The moon, Cancer, fourth house. Because houses have meanings, keywords. Remember, the moon has keywords, and the sign Cancer has keywords. And so on around the zodiac. Leo, Sun, fifth house. Virgo, Mercury, sixth house. Libra, Venus, seventh house. Pluto and Mars and Scorpio, eighth house. Sagittarius and Jupiter, ninth house. Capricorn, Saturn, 10th house. Three meanings here. Aquarius, Uranus, and Saturn, 11th house. Neptune, Jupiter, Pisces, 12th house. Here is our houses board showing all the houses 1 through 12. We will now add the cards one by one. We have Sagittarius on the first house, which immediately establishes a connection between the first house and the ninth house, because Sagittarius' natural house is the ninth house. I just explained that to you. So right away we have a connection between first house and ninth house. The next card is Aries. Aries is the natural ruler of the first house, so it brings us right back to the first house. And now we have a connection between the first house, the ninth house, and the second house. Next we have Gemini in the third house. Gemini rules the third house. Therefore, there is no sign connection to any other house. What we do in this case, we have to determine what planet rules Gemini, which is Mercury, and then wait until Mercury shows up. Wherever Mercury will be located, there will be a connection between that house and the third house. Next, we have Pluto in the third house. Now we have a planetary connection between the third house and the house that Pluto rules in the natural chart, which is the eighth house. So now we have a planetary connection between the third house and the eighth house. Next we have Scorpio in the fourth house. This establishes a sign connection between the fourth house and the eighth house, because Scorpio is the natural ruler of the eighth house. And what have we here? We have Mercury in the fourth house. Now we have two connections here. We have a connection between Mercury in the fourth and Gemini in the third. Remember, Mercury rules Gemini. And we also have the same connection between Scorpio in the fourth house and Pluto in the third, because Pluto rules Scorpio. So there's a very strong connection between the third house, the fourth house, and the eighth house. Next, we have Virgo in the fifth house. That establishes a connection between the fifth house and the sixth house, because Virgo naturally rules the sixth house. Now, the ruler of Virgo is Mercury, which is located in the fourth house. So now we have a connection between the fifth house, the sixth house, and the fourth house. Next, we have Cancer in the sixth house. That establishes a sign connection between the sixth house and the fourth house, because Cancer naturally rules the fourth house. Next, we have Venus in the sixth house. That establishes a planetary connection between the sixth house, where Venus is located, and the second house. The natural ruler of the second house is Taurus. Venus rules Taurus, and also the seventh house, because the natural ruler of the seventh house is Libra, and Venus also rules Libra. So here we have a connection between the sixth, the second, and the seventh. Next, we have Mars in the sixth house also, and Mars establishes a connection between the sixth house, where it is located, to the second house, which is Aries. Remember, Aries is in there. Mars rules Aries. And to the fourth house, because Mars also rules Scorpio. And then it also has a connection to the first house, because in the natural chart, Mars rules Aries, which is the natural ruler of the first house. And also to the eighth house, because in the natural chart, Scorpio rules the eighth house. Mars rules Scorpio, and thereby establishes a connection to the eighth house. You are beginning to see how everything is interconnected. Houses are tied together through signs, through planets, and through natural rulership. And this is the way life is. Nothing is isolated. Everything is connected. Next, we have Taurus in the seventh house. This establishes the connection between the seventh house and the second house, because the natural house for Taurus is the second house. Next, we have Uranus in the seventh house. And this establishes a connection between the seventh house and the 11th house. Aquarius in the natural chart is in the 11th house. Since Uranus rules Aquarius, we have a connection there. Next, we have Neptune also in the seventh house, and that establishes a connection between the seventh house and the 12th house. Because Neptune rules Pisces, and in the natural chart, Pisces is in the 12th house. Next, we have Aquarius in the 8th house. So we have a connection between the 8th house and the 7th house because Uranus is in there. Uranus rules Aquarius. And also between the 8th house and the 11th house because the natural house for Aquarius is the 11th house. So we have a connection between 7, 8, and 11. Next, we have Pisces in the 9th house. This establishes a connection between the 9th house and the 7th house. Can you guess why? Well, Neptune is in the 7th house, and Neptune rules Pisces. We also have a connection between the 9th house and the 12th house. Because in the natural chart, Pisces is in the 12th house. Next, we have Libra in the 10th house, which establishes a sign connection between the 10th house and the 7th house, because the 7th house in the natural chart is ruled by Libra. We also have a connection between the 10th house and the 6th house, because in the 6th house we have Venus, and Venus rules Libra. Next, we have Capricorn in the 11th house. That establishes a connection between the 11th house and the 10th house, because in the natural chart, Capricorn is in the 10th house. Next, we have Leo in the 12th house, which establishes a connection between the 12th house and the 5th house, because in the natural chart, Leo rules the 5th house. Next, we have the Sun in the 12th house in Leo, its own sign. Therefore, no connections are established here. Next, we have Saturn in the 12th house. This establishes a connection between the 12th house and the 11th house, because in the 11th house is Capricorn, which is ruled by Saturn. Also a connection between the 12th house and the 8th house, because in the 8th house we have Aquarius, and Saturn co-rules Aquarius, together with Uranus. Next, we have the Moon also in the 12th house, which establishes a connection between the 12th house and the 6th house, because the 6th house has Cancer in it, which is ruled by the Moon, and also between the 12th house and the 4th house, because the 4th house in the natural chart is ruled by Cancer. Last but not least, we have Jupiter in the 12th house. And I like that because the last card put down is Jupiter, which always tells me that all's going to be well at the very end. Jupiter in the natural chart rules the 9th house through Sagittarius. Sagittarius is located in the 1st house, so therefore Jupiter also establishes a connection with the 1st house. Jupiter also co-rules Pisces together with Neptune. So Pisces is in the 9th house again. So we have a connection therefore between the 12th house, the 9th house, and the 1st house. I'm looking at this video and I see that it's almost 15 minutes long, much longer than I thought it would be. So I will now conclude this video and do another one and pick up where we left off today. Thank you for your time. I hope you learned something. I hope you try what I'm showing you. Give me some feedback and have a great day and be happy.